Welcome to NFL Nexus. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of the boldest, most fascinating, and let's be honest, riskiest team-building experiments of the entire 2026 NFL offseason. We're talking about the Indianapolis Colts and their decision to go all in. Now, this isn't just about a couple of big signings. Nope, this is the story of a franchise pushing all of its chips to the center of the table, making a massive bet that will, for better or for worse, define them for years to come. If you're into deep dives that get into the why behind the headlines, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get right into it. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this whole thing down. First up, we're going to look at the massive gamble they took on offense. We're talking about two contracts that made everyone in the league do a double take. Then we'll talk about the cost of that bet, the key player they had to say goodbye to in order to make the numbers work. After that, we'll flip the script and look at their completely different, almost bargain basement approach to defense. And finally, we'll pull it all together to figure out why this team is truly a franchise standing at a crossroads. So let's kick things off with the offense, because really, this is the heart of the whole story. This is where the Colts front office decided to make their stand. And they didn't just test the waters. Oh no, they cannonballed into the deep end with two monumental decisions that signal they are betting everything on a very specific, very explosive vision for their team. The first, and you could argue the absolute biggest piece of this gamble, was their decision to recommit to quarterback Daniel Jones. And I need to be crystal clear here. This was not some cautious, hey, prove you're healthy kind of deal. They handed him a huge contract less than 3 months after he suffered a torn right Achilles. Now, for anyone who follows this sport, you know an Achilles tear is the big one. It's one of the most feared injuries, especially for a guy like Jones, whose whole game is built around being mobile. It can change everything. How you plant your foot to throw deep, how you escape the rush. It can just fundamentally alter who you are as a player. This right here, this is what the Colts are paying for. They aren't paying for the guy rehabbing on a training table. They are investing every single dollar in the 2025 version of Daniel Jones, the quarterback he was right before that injury. And that guy was having an incredible season, a true renaissance. In just 13 starts, he wasn't just managing the game. He was aggressive, he was pushing the ball downfield, and he was making huge plays. He was the perfect weapon for Coach Shane Steichen's offense, which is at its best when the quarterback can beat you with his arm and his legs. This is the dual-threat leader they believe can win it all. But, and this is the massive multi-million-dollar question, can he actually be that same player again? The history of quarterbacks coming back from this specific injury, it's not great. So often, they lose that critical half step, that little bit of explosion that made them special. Think about it. The ability to just explode off that back foot to launch a ball 50 yards, or the instinct to sidestep a rusher you can't even see. A lot of that is tied to trust in your body. So can a quarterback who relies so heavily on that mobility ever really get back to 100%? That question is the entire bet. And the risk here is so much deeper than just, is his ankle okay? It's about the entire DNA of the offense. If Daniel Jones is even just 5 or 10% less mobile, Coach Steichen might have to tear up his playbook. All those awesome creative plays, the bootlegs, the moving pockets, the play-action fakes that use Jones's legs as a weapon, they all become way less effective. It could mean a total shift to a quick passing game, more shotgun, maybe keeping a running back in to block more often. And every single time you have to do that, you're taking away one of the explosive plays that made this offense so terrifying in the first place. All right, let's turn our attention to the other half of this massive offensive gamble, because believe me, it is just as staggering. The Colts signed wide receiver Alec Pierce to a 4-year, $114 million contract. Just let that number sink in for a second. $114 million. In a league where every single dollar of the salary cap is precious, that figure is absolutely jaw-dropping. And to really put that number into perspective, this wasn't just a big contract. This was a market-shattering, historic deal. With one signature, Alec Pierce became the highest-paid free agent wide receiver in the entire history of the NFL. Now, that's the kind of money, the kind of title you give to a proven, do-it-all, number one guy who can consistently put an offense on his back. And that is precisely what makes this move so incredibly risky when you look at what Pierce has actually done on the field so far. This table right here really lays out the core of the gamble. Just look at the numbers. The most catches Pierce has ever had in a season is 47. Now, don't get me wrong, his yards per catch average is absolutely elite. I mean, over 21 yards a catch is phenomenal, but he's done that on pretty low volume. He's been the home run hitter, the guy who takes the top off the defense. He has not been the guy catching 8 passes a game, moving the chains on 3rd and 6, or battling over the middle. His stats basically scream elite role player, not superstar number one. So what you've got here is this huge disconnect between the player Alec Pierce has been and the player the Colts are now paying him to be. They are gambling big time that a guy who has excelled as a specialist can suddenly transform into a high-volume, do-everything number one receiver that other teams have to game plan around. It's a massive bet on potential, not on proven production in that top dog role. And of course, in a league with a hard salary cap, every giant bet comes with an equally giant cost. The cap is a zero-sum game, right? You can't just hand out record-breaking contracts to a QB and a receiver without it causing a painful ripple effect somewhere else on the roster. For the Colts, that money had to come from somewhere, and that led to a really tough but necessary sacrifice. And that somewhere else ended up being the contract of Michael Pittman Jr. To make the math work on both the Jones and Pierce deals, they had to trade away the one receiver on their team who was a proven, established, high-volume alpha. Pittman was the steady hand, the chain mover, the quarterback's security blanket on third down. He was the guy you knew you could count on, and they sent him packing to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This was a move driven purely by the numbers on a spreadsheet. It wasn't really a football decision in a vacuum. It was a financial necessity created by those other two massive contracts. Trading Pittman instantly cleared up $24 million in cap space. And that's the money that was immediately funneled over to help finalize the deals for Jones and Pierce. It was a cold, hard business decision, plain and simple. So here, you can really see the trade-off they made laid out side by side. If they'd kept Pittman, they would have had that proven alpha, that reliable target, and a really balanced receiving core. But by trading him, they got the cap space they desperately needed, but are now leaning entirely on an unproven guy in Alec Pierce to be their number one. They basically swapped a known, dependable quantity for a massive question mark, and in doing so, changed their offense from being balanced to being incredibly top-heavy. Now, while the offense was out there playing with monopoly money, breaking records, the defensive side of the ball was operating under a completely different set of rules. It's like two different GMs were building each side of this team. So let's take a look at how they hedged their massive offensive bet by being incredibly frugal and value-conscious on defense. Yeah, instead of spending big money to keep their guys, the defense was all about saving money and clearing the books. A perfect example is their decision to just let their 4-year starting safety, Rodney Thomas II, walk away in free agency. He ended up signing with Seattle, and while on paper losing a longtime starter sounds bad, when you look a little closer at his recent play, you can see why the Colts were okay with this move. This timeline basically tells you the whole story of his career in Indy. As a 7th-round rookie back in 2022, Thomas looked like an absolute steal, picking off 4 passes. He was a genuine bright spot on what was a pretty bad team. But after that breakout year, his production just fell off a cliff. The decline started in 23, and by the last 2 seasons, his impact was almost zero. He didn't have a single interception in 2024 or 2025 combined. He went from being a ball hawk to a non-factor. So the real takeaway here is that this move wasn't about the defense getting significantly worse. Given how much his play had dropped off, losing Thomas wasn't some massive blow from a production standpoint. No, this was a financial move, through and through. It was part of that bigger organizational push to save every penny they could to fund those massive bets they were making on offense. So with the spot now open and a clear need for some cheap, young talent in that secondary, the Colts are turning their attention inward to a guy they already have on their roster who they hope is a hidden gem just waiting for his shot. His name is Hunter Wohler. And Hunter Wohler really is the entire defensive strategy in a nutshell. He's a low-cost lottery ticket, a 7th-round pick from 2025 who has really high potential. He looked like a total steal in camp before he got hurt. But, and here's where it gets interesting, he's also a gamble on health. He's coming off a serious season-ending Liz Frank injury, which is brutal for a defensive back. So you see the pattern, right? The team is making the exact same type of bet on both sides of the ball, a bet on a talented player coming back from a major injury, but with wildly different price tags. All right, let's get to our final section and tie this all together. Because when you put these two completely opposite strategies, the high-spending offense and the bargain-hunting defense, right next to each other, you get this really clear, almost jarring picture of a franchise that is truly at a crossroads, with a future that could go in a million different directions. This chart just perfectly captures the team's split personality. On offense, it is all high-risk, high-spending. They're paying for what players have done in the past, betting that injured stars like Daniel Jones can get back to their peak. It's a top-heavy structure built on big names and big money. On defense, it's the total opposite, frugal value-seeking. They're betting on injured prospects like Hunter Wohler, paying for future potential, and trying to build a cost-effective developmental unit from the ground up. It's like two totally different teams operating under one roof. And all of this leads us with one final, huge question that is going to define the Colts' 2026 season and really the legacy of this front office. If this high-stakes bet pays off, if Jones comes back looking like his old self and Alec Pierce becomes that legit #1 guy, they could look like absolute geniuses with a championship-caliber team. But if either one of those core bets fails, this entire carefully built strategy could come crashing down like an unbalanced house of cards. So what do you think? Is this a stroke of genius or a recipe for total disaster? Let me know your take down in the comments. Thanks for watching this explainer. And hey, before you go, if you're looking for a fun way to support the channel, we've got some awesome NFL-themed coloring books for fans of all ages. The link is in the description. We'll see you next time.